Hey guys, I'm Phoenix Gray, and this is LitRPG Happy Hour, where I sample LitRPG and alcoholic beverages. Feel free to drink along if you dare. Today I'll be reading a sample of The Player Blackout, Capes Online Book 1 by Flint, and I'll be playing a game along with it called Enemy Mine, where I will take a drink anytime the main character takes damage from an attack. If you want to follow along, pause this video and download a copy of the book at the link, the book sample at the link provided, or you can just drink whenever I do. As a disclaimer, I do not read every book that I drink to. This is all for fun and to help spread the word about LitRPG and these awesome books. Having said that, let's get started. Today I'm going to be drinking absinthe, which I actually absolutely hate. But so if you're wondering why I even have a bottle of this, it will be coming in a later video. But today I'm just going to go ahead and drink it plain, which when I get to the point where I'm going to do that, I will pause the video because it takes a little bit of preparation. Anyway, Chapter 1. It's amazing how fast your life can change in the blink of an eye. One moment, you're a young police officer on his first day on the job, eager and ready to prove yourself and serve your community. You've just bought your first home, you're engaged to your longtime girlfriend, and you're even thinking about children. Oh, and your dad was just recently confirmed to the Supreme Court too, which is pretty cool as well. But then you lose all that because of one idiot who robbed a bank and decided to take you on a high-speed chase down a crowded highway during rush hour. And then you get into a car crash due to the actions of said idiot and die. And that's that. Everything you had, gone, in the blink of an eye, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, of course, I don't know that I am dead. If I was really dead, would I be able to think any of this? I was taught about heaven and hell and all that in Sunday school when I was a kid, but I'm not sure how much of that I ever really believed. And if I was dead, was this heaven or hell? The place I stood in was a pure white, well, nothingness. For as far as the eye could see, it was just empty nothingness. No ground, no sky, no buildings or people or animals. Hell, there wasn't even any wind. It was pure emptiness. It was also eerily quiet and had no discernible scent that I could smell. But the freakiest thing, I didn't have a body either. When I looked down at myself, I saw nothing. I didn't see my freshly clean, brand new police officer uniform. I didn't see the scar on my left palm I got when I cut my hand when I was cutting some apples when I was 13. I didn't see my shiny police shoes or my holstered gun. I saw nothing, nothing at all. Again, I wondered, was this heaven or hell? Or maybe it was that purgatory place that Catholics believed in. I was raised Baptist, so purgatory wasn't part of my theology, but maybe the Baptists were wrong and the Catholics were right. That would annoy my grandpa, who was a staunch Baptist minister who didn't care much for the Catholic Church, for sure. Don't worry, Niall, said a voice behind me I did not recognize. You aren't in heaven, hell, or even purgatory. You aren't even dead. I whirled around, although it felt more like turning a camera around than actually moving like a human being, to see who had spoken. Sitting behind a desk directly across from me, as he was supposed to be there, was an Arab man I had never seen before, as if he was supposed to be there. He wore a fine blue suit which did not have a single crease or stain anywhere. His short beard was extremely well trimmed, putting my old goatee to shame, and he wore thick sunglasses, although I wasn't sure why he needed them because it wasn't that bright in here. Then again, I didn't see the sun, stars, or any sort of artificial light, which made me wonder how I was seeing anything at all. "Who are you?" I said, "and how do you know my name?" The man smiled. "I know everything about you, Niall Maxwell. Or should I say, Niall Maxwell II, son of Niall Maxwell I, a fine Texas judge who was recently confirmed to the Supreme Court after Justice Peterson's untimely death. You're 25 years old, an inhabitant of Kane, Texas, where you recently started working for the Kane City Police Department, and you're engaged to Sally De Leon, also of Kane, Texas, a registered nurse who you've been dating for 2 years now. She was quite relieved when you finally asked her to marry you, I heard." I bit my lower lip. Privacy wasn't really a thing nowadays, thanks to the way the internet penetrated nearly every facet of our lives. But I found the way this man rattled off my every detail, even down to how Sally felt about me finally proposing to her, unnerving to say the least, especially since I had never even seen him before. "I see you've done your homework." The man raised a folder off his desk with my name, Niall Maxwell, stamped across it. "Oh, I was never a very good student in school. One of my fellow agents did most of the footwork on you, although considering how much you and your fiancé use social media, I doubt it took him long to collect all of the pertinent information. And more. Much, much more." I reached out with a hand toward the folder, but stopped when I realized that I had a body now. I looked down and saw that I looked much the same way I did when the car crashed, which was a very odd feeling. "Sorry about that," said the man as he lowered my folder down onto his desk. I've been informed that there are still some issues with the body scanning process, which means that sometimes the mind is uploaded before the system finishes scanning the body. I've been told that being a disembodied mind is very disturbing and potentially traumatic. Disturbing, yes, I said, feeling my body just to make sure it was real. Traumatic? Guess I'll find out. I'm pretty tough. I can handle things most other people can't. The man raised an eyebrow. Confidence is a good quality to have, but there is a special abode in hell for the arrogant. So I take it this isn't hell, I said, looking around at the white void in which we stood. Explains the absence of fire and brimstone and red-horned demons poking the damned with pitchforks. As I said, this is neither heaven nor hell, said the man, but it is an afterlife, or your afterlife anyway, if you choose to make it that. I looked directly at the man. Forgive me for my rudeness, but I find it a little unfair how you know everything about me, down to the color of my underwear probably, but I don't even know your name. It's Charles, said the man simply. Charles Omar. I am an agent for the Department of Virtual Reality, assigned to help you and about 5 others smoothly make the transition from the real world to this one. I frowned. I'd heard about the Department of Virtual Reality, of course. Established 14 years ago in 2029 by President Michael Crane, the Department of Virtual Reality enforced the law in the realm of VR, which had exploded in popularity in America and abroad with the release of VR MMORPGs like Capes Online and others. I only knew this because Sally was a big political junkie, and she had a tendency to rant to me about whatever the current political hot topic of the day was, although I couldn't give a darn about any of it myself. What do you mean by transition there, Chuck? I said. Do you mind if I call you Chuck? Charles' left eye twitched slightly. No, I don't. As for what I mean, I think it is time I told you exactly what happened to you. I know what happened to me, I said, resting my hands on my belt. I was driving down the highway trying to catch that idiot Bryce Cunningham, and then we got into a huge car wreck because he slammed into me, and then we crashed into a fuel truck, and, well, after that, I don't know what happened. I assumed I died, but given how I'm talking to you, I think that's probably not a safe assumption to make. It is not, Chuck agreed. You are correct on the other details, however. On the morning of Tuesday, the 2nd of January, 2043, at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, you went on a high-speed chase to capture the wanted criminal Bryce Cunningham, who had robbed Kane First National Bank that same day. You chased Mr. Cunningham for approximately 10 minutes and 31 seconds before the two of you crashed into an automated fuel truck, killing both of you, as well as killing about a dozen other people on the busy highway at the same time. I grimaced. Oh, I didn't know that. Chuck waved off my concern. It is not relevant to this discussion. Anyway, both of you technically were killed, or at least your bodies were. But being human beings, I hope you understand, are more than just our bodies. We have souls, minds, things which separate us from animals. I cracked a grin. I don't know, my dog Joey was pretty smart, although the only words he seemed to understand were walk and food. Chuck continued as if I hadn't said a word. Allow me to welcome you to your second chance at life. To a second life, you might say. No longer will you live with a flesh and blood physical body. Instead, you will dwell in virtual reality. I welcome you to Project Second Life, where those who died prematurely get a second chance at life itself. Chapter 2. Project Second Life? I repeated, staring at Chuck uncertainly. What is that? And what do you mean I'm going to dwell in virtual reality? Are you telling me I'm in a video game? Because this doesn't look like any video game I've ever played. You're not yet in the game itself, Chuck explained. The mind to virtual reality upload process takes some time. In the mean, you're stuck here, although it won't be much longer before you're transported into virtual reality. I'm here to simply explain what Project Second Life is and what it means for you. That explained why I had been just a disembodied mind for a moment there. The uploading process did not upload my entire self all at once. It was a weird thought, and I still wasn't sure I believed everything Chuck said. But so far I didn't have any evidence against anything he said. He seemed to be telling me the truth so far, which was either a good thing or a bad thing. I still hadn't decided which it was. Okay, Chuck, I said. I looked around. If we're going to talk, it sure would be easier if I had a chair or something to sit down. A wooden chair suddenly appeared behind me and knocked me off my feet. The chair shot toward the desk, with me hanging on for dear life, and then stopped abruptly in front of Chuck's desk. Based on Chuck's barely disguised smile, I could tell he had done that on purpose. Now that we're both comfortable, let me tell you exactly what Project Second Life is, said Chuck. He pulled out another folder from his desk and slapped it down on the desk, allowing me to see the words Project Second Life written across it. Project Second Life is a joint project between SI Games and the United Nations. Its purpose is to experiment with the idea of digital immortality. Digital immortality? I repeated. What do you mean by that? Isn't it obvious? Said Chuck. Digital immortality is an idea first conceptualized by Robert J. Baker, a philosopher from the early 21st century, who theorized that the mind could be uploaded to a computer to live effectively forever. Back then, of course, it was impossible to do due to the rather primitive computer technology of that era. It was a domain of science fiction writers and people who lived more in their heads than in reality. It's impossible nowadays, too, I said. Yeah, our tech might be more advanced than what people had back then, but I've never heard of anyone actually achieving this digital immortality you're telling me about. Still seems to be science fiction to me. Chuck's smile took on a slightly sinister bent. Not publicly, no. But recent developments in computer technology has allowed for the possibility of digital immortality, and not merely a possibility, but a reality in itself, as you and many others have found. Others? I repeated. You mean I'm not the only person involved in this Project Second Life thing you're telling me about? Of course not, said Chuck. As I said, Project Second Life is a joint project between SI Games and the United Nations. I should have clarified that not every UN member is part of this project, or even knows about it. Only the UN's charter members, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China, are involved. Each one of those 5 countries has provided about half a dozen citizens from their respective populations, to test out Project Second Life. Well, I don't remember signing up for this project, I said, folding my arms across my chest. Don't get me wrong, better digital than dead, but I don't remember signing up for this. Chuck looked at me, but his smile was gone. That's because someone in the government pulled a few strings to get you into the program. It was a last-ditch effort to save you. If you had not been enrolled into Project Second Life, you would have died for good, just like Mr. Cunningham. That monster is dead? He died instantly when your cars collided with the fuel truck, said Chuck calmly. You, on the other hand, were severely injured but still alive, albeit just barely. You lasted just long enough for us to upload your mind to the Project Second Life. Meaning my body is gone? I said. I didn't want to say dead, because I was afraid of how final that word sounded. Chuck nodded. Yes. The Mind to VR upload process is a one-way trip, I'm afraid. Even if your body was not dead, you wouldn't be able to return to it. For all intents and purposes, this is your real life now, or soon will be once the uploading process is finished. I stared at Chuck, unable to find the words to say anything. I looked desperately in his eyes and face for a sign that this was some kind of a horrible prank he was pulling on me, but he looked 100% serious. He looked so serious that I doubted he was even capable of telling a joke. What about my parents? I said. My brother, Sally, do they know? Everyone believes you're dead, said Chuck shortly. Because Project Second Life has yet to be unveiled to the public, we're under strict orders not to reveal the true fate of its test subjects, even to their friends and family. Your funeral is scheduled for a week from today, by the way. I saw it in the news, perhaps because you're the son of Supreme Court Justice. I leaned forward, putting my hands on my knees. Why? Why can't they know that I'm still alive? Why the lies? Because if knowledge about Project Second Life becomes public before SI Games has ironed out all the bugs, it could have unforeseen consequences, said Chuck. Trust me, Niall. There are many people in the world who would use this technology for less than noble purposes if they were aware it existed. Can I contact my friends and family? I asked. Is there any way to talk to them at all? Chuck shook his head. No. All Project Second Life participants are forbidden to contact their friends and family from real life. But don't worry, once Project Second Life goes public, you'll be able to contact anyone you want, whenever you want. When will it go public? I asked eagerly. Chuck shrugged. When it is ready, so approximately 10 years from now. I stood up and slammed my hands down on the desk, which shook under my pressure. That's not good enough, Chuck. Sally needs to know I'm alive. She needs to know that I'm still here. I need to talk to her. I need to talk to her now. Chuck, to his credit, didn't seem very intimidated by my anger. And torture her with the knowledge that she can never be with you. After all, you are in virtual reality and she is not. Even if she got a game pod to allow her to play the game, you would never truly be able to stay together. It is for the greater good that your fiancé and your family remain in the dark about this, at least for now. Besides, I wasn't the one who put you in the game, so getting angry at me is pointless. My hands tightened on the desk. Then who is? I am not at liberty to disclose that information to you, said Chuck. All I can tell you is that you apparently have friends in high places. My hands shook, but I knew getting angry at Chuck was pointless, like he said. I was more angry at the idiot who somehow forced me into this program against my will. I wanted to sock him in the face for ruining my life. Even if he was the President of the United States, he had no right to do this to me, no right to separate me from Sally or my family against my will. Maybe it would have been better to die after all than live with the knowledge that my loved ones thought I was dead, and that Sally might even find another man. That thought made me angrier than all of the rest put together. Forcing myself to calm down, I sat back down on the chair. Fine. So why does Project Second Life exist at all? Mostly as a way to allow people experiencing a lower quality of life with little hope of improvement to have a better life, Chuck replied. people who modern medicine cannot fix, or people who see no hope in their life anymore. Assisted suicide is the current legal manner that such people are allowed to deal with their problems, but it is believed by the UN that digital immortality, where you get a body that never dies or decays or suffers from any permanent medical issues, would be a more humane way to deal with such people. I nodded. A friend of mine a few years back got into a car accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down. He chose assisted suicide to deal with it, a move I didn't agree with then and still don't now. I don't know why, but even though assisted suicide had become legal decades ago, I still don't like it. What game am I going to be playing then? I should have said living in, but I didn't want to think of this as a living. Despite what Chuck said, a small part of me still hoped that this was reversible, that I might someday be able to return to the real world to reunite with Sally and see my family again. It was probably wrong, but I didn't care. I needed that hope. Capes Online, Chuck replied. Published back in 2028 by SI Games, it is the world's first, biggest, and most popular VR MMORPG with an estimated player base of over 3 billion and about 500 million regular players. Capes Online, I said. I remember the old version of that game from when I was a kid, before the VR edition was released. That was the one where you could be a superhero, right? Or supervillain, said Chuck. But yes, that's the one. Despite how sad I was, I could not help but smile at the memories of playing Capes Online when I was a kid. I remembered how much fun I had playing as my chosen character, Winter, completing missions, fighting villains, and doing all sorts of cool stuff. It was one of the things that motivated me to become a cop. Police officers were as close to being a superhero as you could get in real life. But thinking about my real-life job, a job I'd never get to do again, just made me depressed and angry, so I quickly said, "Why Capes Online?" As I said, it is the biggest VR MMORPG on the market today, said Chuck. It has the most talented developers, programmers, and designers in the world working for its parent company, SI Games. It helps that its founder, Homer Sitterson, is also very much interested in the concept of digital immortality. If anyone can figure out how to make digital immortality work, it would be them. I nodded. So what exactly am I going to be testing? What am I supposed to do when I get to CO, in other words? Chuck shrugged again. Whatever you want. Play the game, be a hero, or a villain. We don't really care. Will I be interacting with other players? I asked, or will I be segregated from the rest of the game world? You'll be able to interact with other players, including ones who are not part of Project Second Life, Chuck said. He held up a finger. But you must never tell them your true nature. You must pretend to be a normal player like everyone else. And what if I tell them what I actually am? I said, touching my chest. What are the consequences for breaking the law, in other words? Chuck stared at me with a rather unnerving expression. Let's just say it's not something you want to do and leave it at that. I frowned. Chuck's words were rather ominous, if a bit vague, but I could tell he wasn't going to elaborate on what he meant. Probably not allowed to, or something. It was annoying, but at the same time, I decided to take his advice. Besides, I doubted any of the other players would believe me, even if I told them what I was. Hell, I wasn't even sure I believed it entirely just yet. Before I could ask him any other questions, I heard a sudden ding sound like a bell, and Chuck glanced at his watch. Ah, it appears that the Mind to VR uploading process is complete. That means you'll now be transferred from the waiting room, which is where we are currently, to Capes Online itself in approximately 30 seconds. A timer suddenly appeared over Chuck's head. It started at 30 seconds before it started to rapidly count down, almost faster than my eyes could follow. Fear rising within me, I looked at Chuck and said, "Wait, I still have so many questions." "Don't worry," said Chuck, waving a hand at me. "I've been told the transfer process to Capes Online is practically painless, so you likely won't feel a thing once the timer reaches 0. And if you have any questions, I am always available to speak to you," Chuck continued. "Once you're in-game, you will see a help button on your menu that will allow you to contact me. In addition, my team and I will be monitoring the actions of you and your fellow American test subjects in Project Second Life in-game. So if anything happens that might threaten your new digital life, we may very well act before you even realize it." 10 seconds left," said Chuck, glancing up at the timer above his head. He waved at me. "Goodbye, Niall Maxwell. It was nice speaking to you, and good luck in your second life. I hope you have a lot of fun." Before I could say anything else, the timer above Chuck's head hit 0, and the waiting room vanished. The last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me was Chuck sitting at his desk, smirking at me for reasons I didn't understand. And then my whole world went from white to black. Chapter 3. At least one thing Chuck said was true. The transition from the waiting room to Capes Online was painless. I didn't feel any sort of pain or discomfort. It was just like loading times in a video game, although much more real. It was hard to describe. I guess it was the difference between watching a video game and playing it yourself, only even more different than that. In any case, I found myself floating in what seemed like an endless dark void. Once again, I was bodiless, only this time it was less disturbing than before, probably because I was more used to it by now. For a moment, I thought maybe the transfer process had glitched or failed. Instead of being transferred to Capes Online, maybe my data or whatever I was got lost in between the waiting room and Capes Online, where I was doomed to float bodiless through eternal darkness for the rest of my life. Kind of like a Lovecraft story, except minus the eldritch abominations that made you go insane just by looking at them. But then the darkness vanished and I found myself watching what I thought was a movie at first. I was hovering in the air above a massive, sprawling city that stretched for as far as the eye could see in every direction. It looked kind of like a combination of New York City and San Francisco, but I also caught hints of Beijing and Moscow, among other major cities. It was an awe-inspiring sight because I was pretty sure there weren't any cities this big in real life. More importantly, however, were the various figures I saw flying or running through the city. They looked like spandex wearing superheroes. Some of them wore capes and flew through the skies, while others ran along the streets, and a few even jumped rooftop to rooftop. Some of them had more interesting ways of flying than others. For example, I saw a guy with a jetpack rocketing through the sky, while another guy with a cape flew like an arrow, and one woman was surfing on a board that had no propulsion system I could see. A voice suddenly boomed in my ears. 50 years ago, a portion of the human population of Earth began developing what could only be described as superpowers all of a sudden. From the United States to Japan and everywhere between, human beings began to do things only written about in comic books or seen in movies. Humans all over the world could suddenly lift cars with one hand, fly like birds, move faster than a speeding bullet, control the elements, and so much more, leading to the most rapid change in human civilization since the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly I saw a man in a hoodie and jeans standing on top of what looked like the Empire State Building. He was trembling with fear, but then he took a deep breath and jumped. Instead of falling to his death, however, the man started flying. His movements were awkward and clumsy at first, but then he got to the hang of it and started doing laps around the building. Officer workers inside the building glued themselves to the windows, pointing and gaping at the flying man, who smiled and waved at them like he was some kind of celebrity or something. But not all humans use their powers for good, the voice continued. Although humans might have started developing fantastic powers, human nature didn't change. Many people began to use their newfound powers to enrich themselves or kill other people or perform all sorts of other crimes, lashing out against a world they believe had harmed them unjustly. Soon a new wave of superpowered crime, committed by superhumans called villains, swept the globe, causing crime rates to spike across nearly every country on the planet. The image shifted again. This time I was standing on a street in front of a bank. The doors to the bank suddenly burst open and a massive man, who looked more like a walking mountain than a man, ran out from the bank, a wicked grin on his face and several bags of gold bars in his huge hands. Then I saw myself watching another scene, this time with a man wearing a demon-like mask, pinning an innocent woman down an alleyway with shadowy tendrils. The woman was struggling against the tendrils, but before she could cry out for help, the man covered her mouth with his hand and chuckled. Yet hope was not lost, said the voice. Though many humans gave into their darker nature and used their powers to indulge in the grossest crimes, just as many, if not more, people decided to rise above their nature. They used their powers to help people, to stop the villains, and make their streets, cities, and countries safe once again. These people are admired as heroes by the general population, trusted and beloved by citizens for their dedication to truth and justice. I saw the last two scenes again, except this time they played out differently. The bank robber, for example, suddenly found himself confronted by a much smaller man who wore blue and red tights. The bank robber sneered at the man. The smaller man jumped at him and punched him in the face hard enough to make the mountain man fall over backward onto the street, apparently unconscious. In the other scene, a man in green tights and wearing a mask that resembled a tiger's face materialized out of thin air, fired an arrow at the would-be rapist. The arrow struck the potential rapist in the back of the neck, and he immediately collapsed. Though whether dead or unconscious, I couldn't tell. The almost victim, however, rushed into the arms of her rescuer, crying as he held her close and comforted her. Heroes and villains, the voice continued, welcome to the world of Capes Online, where every choice you make decides your fate. Which side will you choose in the never-ending battle between good and evil? The choice, ultimately, is yours. A loud, epic orchestral song suddenly blared around me as the scene before me faded out and was replaced with Capes Online over the same huge city from before. Underneath the title, a small subtitle read, Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks. Then the title screen faded away, and I found myself floating in darkness once again before a notification appeared in my view. Welcome to Capes Online, Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks. Before you begin, please take a moment to adjust your character settings, such as height, skin color, hair color, and more. Although our mind-to-VR transfer process does its best to accurately translate your body in the real world to the game world, we understand if you want to make a few adjustments to your body before you start to play. A character creation screen appeared in front of me. It showed a full-size 3D model of myself, although I was not wearing my police uniform. Instead, I wore a red long-sleeved shirt and jeans, with basic sneakers and ring on my left hand. I found that, with a simple thought, I could rotate the model at will, allowing me to see every part of my body from any angle or position I wanted. Overall, it was a fairly accurate representation of my real body, although I didn't understand why I wasn't in my police uniform. Oh well. I made a few adjustments to my body, like eliminating my gut, emphasizing the muscles on my body, and making myself a couple of inches taller for good effort, and was amazed at how intuitive and exact the process was. I didn't have to spend time trying to get things exactly the way I wanted. I just imagined what I wanted my body to look like, and the model would change accordingly. It was certainly a lot easier to change my body here than in real life, although there was something slightly creepy about the idea that the game system understood exactly what I wanted down to the tiniest detail. Was it reading my mind or something? In any case, once I was satisfied with my character's appearance, I hit the save button below, and my character screen vanished. New notification appeared in my vision just then. Congratulations, you are now ready to enter the dynamic and ever-changing world of Capes Online. Before you can truly begin playing, however, you need to go through your origin story. Be warned, the decisions you make in your origin story will have ramifications you can only begin to comprehend. Each decision you make will determine whether you're a hero or a villain. As always, choose wisely. Before I could think anything else, the darkness around me evaporated, and I found myself standing on a street in a city I didn't recognize, but which looked like the city from the opening cinematic I just watched. But I paid little attention to my surroundings because at that moment I heard a woman screaming for her life. Chapter 4. When I heard the screaming, I looked around the empty street around me, but did not spot anyone. Then I heard the scream again, this time from behind me, and whirled around to see a woman in the alleyway just off the street. The woman was gorgeous. Not quite as gorgeous as Sally, but she was definitely my type. Long dark hair that went down to her shoulders, a beautiful yellow dress that fitted her form rather well, and a figure to die for. Unfortunately, her beautiful face was marred with terror as she clutched her purse close to her chest. She was backed up against the wall of the grimy alleyway, her eyes wide with fear as she tried to stay outside of the reach of the grabbing thugs. She almost tripped over a discarded beer bottle, but never took her eyes off of the thugs menacing her. Thugs, by contrast, looked like garbage bags given life. Although I hadn't been a police officer very long, I was well acquainted with their type, having once been robbed by jerks like them in real life. They were big and strong, but also dumb and ugly. They wore the trashiest jeans and old t-shirts you could imagine, and each one of them had a gun. The only thing they had going for them was that they were apparently diverse, because one of them was white, another was black, and the other was Hispanic. I guess purse-snatching thieves are pretty tolerant and open-minded people. Regardless, the black guy seemed to be the leader. He was pointing his gun threateningly at the woman, a vicious grin on his misshapen features. "Hand over the purse, lady, and no one got to get hurt," said the black thug in a gravelly voice. "Yeah, you heard the boss," said the white guy, his voice wheezily despite his large frame. "Hand it over, now." "Shut up, Ted," the black thug snapped. He waved his gun. "I'll be the one doing all the talking here. You just stand there and make sure the nice lady here don't get away while we're not looking." I don't think there was any chance of the woman even attempting to get away while they weren't looking. She was absolutely petrified with fear, leaning against the wall so hard that she looked like she was trying to become one with it. No surprise. Those thugs may have been dumb and ugly, but that didn't mean they couldn't do some serious harm to her if they wanted. "I know, boss," said Ted, raising his hands. I was just, the Hispanic guy said, waving his hands back and forth mockingly. "Give it a rest, Ted. No one cares what you think." "Rolando is right," said the black guy with a nod. He turned his attention back to Mum. "Okay, lady, give us your purse and we'll let you go back home to your nice house and job. Sounds reasonable, don't it?" It was obvious to me that the thugs had no intention of letting her leave, even if she gave her purse to them. The lust in their eyes as they took in her beautiful form was bluntly obvious. I could imagine they would want to have some fun with her before they even considered letting her go. Suddenly, the woman shouted, "Help! Someone help me! Someone save me from these thugs! Please, someone save—" The black thug rushed forward and slammed his hand over her mouth. He put his gun against her head, and the woman's eyes widened in fear. Now, ladies," the black thug in a far more dangerous voice than before, "we ain't gonna have none of that now. We're gonna handle this all by ourselves, see? No need to drag innocent bystanders into it." As soon as the black thug finished speaking, 2 notifications suddenly popped up in my vision. Mission: save the woman. An innocent woman was accosted on her way back home from work, and is now at the mercy of 3 vicious thugs who probably want more than her purse, if you catch my drift. Although you are an unaligned civilian and not a hero like the caped crusaders you see on TV, you feel a powerful urge to help the woman, even if it means putting your own life at risk. Those thugs have guns after all, and you definitely don't. Alignment, hero. Difficulty level, easy. Rarity, common. Success, defeat the thugs and save the woman. Failure, continue walking on your way and ignore the woman. You're just a civilian after all. Rewards, instant promotion to the hero alignment. Accept, yes or no. I almost hit yes, but I wanted to look at the other notification first. Mission, rob the woman. A naive girl thought she could save a few minutes on her walk home from work by taking a shortcut in a dark alley, only to get ambushed by a trio of fine young enterprising men who know an opportunity to enrich themselves when they see it. But the hallmark of a villain is knowing when to swoop in and get the rewards after others have done all the hard work. Are you brave enough to steal that woman's purse right out from under the noses of the Three Stooges? Or are you going to let a perfect opportunity to enrich yourself go to waste? Alignment, villain. Difficulty level, easy. Rarity, common. Success, rob the woman before the thugs do. Failure, help the woman for free, like the sucker you are. Rewards, instant promotion to the villain alignment. Accept, yes or no. What the heck? I was vaguely aware that Capes Online gave players the option of being a hero or villain, but I couldn't see how anyone with a conscience could possibly accept the villain mission. Even if this was just a game, that woman threatened with mugging and possibly even rape didn't know that. And it didn't change the fact that thugs are thugs, whether real or virtual. Before I made any given decision, however, a third notification appeared in my vision. You've been given a choice. Depending on which mission you accept, you can become a hero or a villain. But be aware that neither status is permanent. Every action you make in-game will tip your alignment toward one end of the spectrum or the other. Heroes can become villains, and even the worst villains can find redemption. As always, choose wisely. I hesitated for a second. That was oddly realistic for a game. I would think most players would choose one way or another, but I guess the developers really wanted to go the whole hog with this game. I remember that the original Capes Online locked you into whatever alignment you chose at the beginning. Guess they were going for more realism in this version. But I didn't care. I accepted the hero mission and all 3 notifications vanished at once, only to be replaced by a new notification that read, "You have accepted mission, save the woman. You're now obligated to see the mission through to the end. If at any time you need a refresher on your mission objectives or any other details about your current mission, go to the missions menu in your character menu. Good luck." I swiped the notification out of my view. I hoped I didn't get notifications like that all the time, otherwise I was going to go crazy. I bet there was an option in the settings to change how often those darn things appeared. In any case, it was go time now. I reached for my gun in my holster before I remembered I was not in my police uniform anymore. A quick check of my body showed me that I didn't have any weapons on me at all, which meant I was at a severe disadvantage when it came to dealing with the thugs. This may have been a game, but I suspected that getting shot by a virtual gun hurt just as much as getting shot by a real one. I did, however, see a stone lying on the ground not too far away, so I picked up the rock and held it behind my back. It wasn't much, but maybe I could use it to nail the leader and make him drop his gun. It was better than nothing, at least. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the alley and shouted, "Hey thugs, leave that woman alone!" The thugs, who had been in the process of trying to wrench the woman's purse from her hands, suddenly looked over at me. They didn't look terribly afraid of me, but they also didn't aim their guns at me. That was good. As long as they didn't think I was a threat, this would make everything much easier. "Hey, bud," said the white guy with a sneer. "This ain't none of your business, see? Unless you're the lady's boyfriend, that is." "No, I've never seen this woman before in my life," I replied, speaking as confidently as I could. "But I can't stand seeing a defenseless woman like her being attacked by thugs like you. Cowards like you are exactly the kind of scum I hate the most." "What are you, some kind of hero wannabe?" said Rolando with a laugh. "You sound just like a Lightbringer, except Lightbringer is, an actual hero, not an overconfident civilian like you." I had no idea who Lightbringer was, so I simply said, "I may be just an ordinary civilian, but that doesn't mean I have to stand by and watch you manhandle such a beautiful woman. Let me repeat my order again. Leave her alone, now, or things will get ugly." The black thug, whose name was apparently Thug Jim, because I could suddenly see his name floating above his head for some reason, let go of the woman and turned to face me. The woman didn't move, however. She just sunk onto the street, clutching her purse to her chest and looking from me to the thugs and back again with a terrified face. "Look what we have here, boys," said Jim, a wicked grin crossing his ugly features. "A guy who wants to be a hero. I wonder if he's aware of how often heroes die." I tensed, even though none of the thugs were pointing their weapons at me yet. Giving up your life for another person's is nothing to be ashamed of, better than living like a coward who preys on weak women who can't defend themselves. Jim scowled. Allow me to make a counter-offer. You run off and let us do what we will with the woman. In return, we won't fill your body with lead and dump your corpse in a ditch somewhere to rot. I shook my head. Sorry, but I'm gonna have to say no to your offer. I think I'd rather beat you three and save the woman. Jim's scowl deepened. He glanced at his comrades. Ted, Roe, teach this guy a lesson while I finish our business with a nice lady. Don't be too loud about it, though. Don't want to attract the cops, or worse, a hero. Ted and Rolando nodded. They raised their guns, but I didn't hesitate. I flung the rock out from behind my back, and it smacked directly into Jim's huge forehead. Jim cried out and fell over onto the street, clutching his bleeding forehead. Boss, said Ted, as he and Rolando looked down at Jim. You okay, boss? Sensing my opportunity, I rushed forward and barreled into the two thugs. I managed to knock down Ted, but Rolando had better balance and began grappling with me. Although I managed to knock his gun out of his hands, Rolando himself was surprisingly strong, forcing me down to the street and trying to choke me with his large hands. I struggled to hold him back, but found it hard until strength flooded my limbs all of a sudden, and a notification appeared in the corner of my vision. Power unlocked. Super strength, level 1. You now have the strength of 2 mighty men. Cost, none. Passive. Level up your power further by increasing it with power points in your character menu. Although I didn't quite understand what happened, I couldn't deny the strength I felt flowing through me. I shoved Rolando off me hard enough to send him rolling into a trash can, which fell on him and spilled its disgusting contents all over him. Scrambling to my feet, I looked up in time to see Ted aiming his gun at me, his finger on the trigger. Knowing I needed to be fast, I rushed toward Ted and stopped the gun out of his hands. Ted yelled, but then I punched him in the face and he went flying. He slammed into the street a few feet away and went still. 2 more notifications appeared in my vision. Thug Rolando and Thug Ted have been defeated. Thugs remaining, 1 of 3. My eyes fixated on the number of remaining thugs. I thought I defeated Jim, but if this notification was correct, a gunshot exploded in the alley and I fell down to my hands and knees, gasping for breath. I felt awful pain in my lower back and received another notification. You were shot, -3 health. Status inflicted, gunshot wound. Lose 1 health every 3 seconds until you die. Alright, so that was an attack to the main character, so I'm going to get the things I need to make this absinthe, and then I will be right back. Alright guys, so I am back. I'm hoping this is going to work because you need ice cold water to louche absinthe, and I don't have cold water. I didn't have cold water in my fridge. I have ice and I have water, but I do not have ice cold water. Anyway, so I am making it with the ice and the water. I'm just going to pour a little bit in here, and apparently I'm going to pour it on myself as well. Probably about an 1 ounce pour of absinthe. I actually don't know how well you're going to be able to see this with my... Oh, this stuff even smells bad. I hate licorice. Let's not put that on the floor. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this with my camera, because my camera... Ooh, and I'm going to have to lift this and... Alright, so this is getting ready to be a little challenging. So you actually don't have to do this with a sugar cube. I'm going to do it with a sugar cube because I think it might make it taste a little better. Let's see if I can pour this without getting it everywhere. Let me move my keyboard. Alright, so there's that. And then, yeah, this is going to be exceptionally hard to do. Holding it. Oh, I didn't even realize the spoon has like a little divot on here to keep it on there. Good, because I actually am going to need to swirl this around as soon as I get this up where I need it to be. So, move my hands out of the way so you can actually see what I'm doing. It's very slow. Not quite slow enough. Come on. Let's see. It looks like it's slowly starting to louche. Come on. What are you doing it for me? Hoping that water is cold enough because it actually needs to be pretty cold. Alright, there it goes. So I don't know if you can see. Actually, you really can't see. But it louched. It turned cloudy, which is what I wanted it to do. It didn't louche all the way to the top, which is kind of weird, but you know what? I'm just going to pour a little bit more in there just to get rid of that sugar cube. It did what it was supposed to do. Didn't do it ideally as much as I would have liked, but That's good enough. So, bottoms up. Oh, that's disgusting. Oh man. If you like licorice, that is exactly what absinthe tastes like. If you like Jaeger, you'll probably like absinthe. Having this with a Sprite chaser because they actually don't taste too bad together. Alright. Let me go ahead and continue reading. Chapter 5. Just like I thought, getting shot hurt just as much in game as it did in real life. I had never been shot before, of course, but I imagined this was probably what it felt like. I could barely think through the pain, and the decreasing health certainly didn't help matters, especially since I didn't even know how much health I had left. A kick in the side knocked me over, and I found myself lying flat on my back on the street in an increasingly large pool of my own blood. The kick took another point or two off my health and sent pain rushing through my body again. Even though this was a game, the pain felt as real as any pain I'd felt in real life, if not even worse. Okay, so that was another one. This is something you're probably never going to see me do in another video, but I hate absinthe so much that I'm going to switch beverages. So I'm taking another pause real quick to go grab something else, because yeah, I cannot do that again. So I think this is the, I'm back. I think this is the last, like, character injury thing where I'm going to have to take a drink. Anyway, I switched to the gelatinis. You've seen me do these in another video. This one is Alibi, Tropical Island Punch. These are really, really good. Next time I go to the liquor store, once I run out, I still have a few of these left, but once I go to the liquor store, if I see these again, I'm definitely going to buy them again, because I think I want to keep these in my fridge at all times. They are just that delicious. So, let me, oh, I don't know if you saw this one that was like flying right in front of my face. Like that, because these drip everywhere. So much better than that absinthe. Oh my god. Cleanse my palate of the grossness. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm still thinking about the flavor of that absinthe. Anyway. Okay, let me see, where was I at? Then Jim appeared above me. Although his forehead was still bleeding from where my rock had hit him, he seemed to be fine otherwise. A murderous scowl appeared on his features as he aimed his gun at me. "You're no hero, but you're every bit as annoying as those masked freaks," said Jim. "Better take you out before you start getting ideas. We got enough heroes as it is. Don't need another caped do-gooder running around acting like he owns the place." I wanted to get up, but my body wouldn't respond. My health was dropping every couple of seconds, and the pain I felt was paralyzing. All I could do was hope maybe death in-game wouldn't be permanent, and that maybe I would get to try the mission again next time. But I couldn't accept that. Even though I knew this was just a game, I didn't want to let these guys have their way with that woman. The idea that I failed to protect an innocent person from criminal scum sent anger shooting through my veins. With a grunt, I grabbed Jim's ankle and pulled. With a surprised shout, Jim fell down onto the pavement by me. I scrambled back to my feet, ignoring the pain in my lower back, and looked over just in time to see Jim rising back to his feet. He was rubbing his head and pointing his gun at me, but I lunged forward and stopped the gun out of his hands. Jim's gun flew out of his hands and landed several feet away from us, out of his reach. Then I kicked Jim in the groin and he fell down. I stomped my foot on his chest, making Jim gasp for breath before I grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and lifted him up. I pulled back my fist, preparing a punch that would knock him out in one blow. "Hey man," said Jim in a terrified voice. "We thought you were just a joker, okay? If you let us go, we'll leave that lady alone and never bother her again. Honest." I snorted. "Do you think I'm that naive or just stupid? Because I'm not either. Good night." With that, I slammed my fist into the side of his face and Jim went unconscious. Notification appeared out of the corner of my eye. "Thug Jim has been defeated. Remaining thugs, 0 of 3. I dropped Jim's unconscious body onto the ground, feeling relieved that the fight was over, but before I could celebrate, intense pain flowed through me and I fell to the street. Landing on my hands and knees, I saw another notification appear in my vision. "Your health is now less than 10%. Debuff, crippling pain, movement, negative 50%, and consciousness plus 50% harder to maintain." Darn it. Even though I beat the thugs, it looked like I was going to die anyway. That meant I was going to fail the mission regardless of what I did. What a great start to my new life, if it could even be called that. "Hey, are you okay?" said a female voice above me. I looked up to see the frightened woman from before standing above me. She no longer clutched her purse quite as tightly as before, but she had her hand over her mouth and was looking at me as if I was a corpse. Given how much I was bleeding, that wasn't exactly inaccurate. "No," I grunted, "but don't worry about me. Are you okay?" "Yes," said the woman, nodding. She looked at the unconscious Jim and shuddered. "For a moment there I really thought I was going to die. First time I've ever been mugged. It's not an experience I ever want to go through again." I nodded in return, despite my pain. "Yeah, most people don't. But you're safe now, although I would suggest calling the cops." "Sure," said the woman, nodding again. Then she hesitated. "Thanks for saving me, by the way. Even though you're not a hero, you sure acted like one. Most people in your situation would have just kept walking." "No problem," I said. I grunted in pain. "You wouldn't happen to have some kind of healing item or something, would you?" The woman shook her head. "Sorry, but I'm not a doctor or a nurse, so I can't heal you. But I can call an ambulance to come pick you up and take you to the hospital. Do you think you'll be able to remain conscious for that long?" I, I, I think so," I said. I put a hand on my head. Oh, man. Darkness was gathering in the corners of my eyes, and I could feel my consciousness slowly slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. Another notification informed me that I had less than 5% health left and dropping. I figured I had just a few seconds left before I died, and once I did, all of my progress would be lost. I looked up at the woman with pleading eyes. "Please, tell me what your name is." "Rebecca," said the woman. "Rebecca Connor. What's yours?" I took a deep, shuddering breath and said, "My name is—" I didn't get a chance to finish speaking because I fell into the street and everything went black. A notification appeared in my vision. "You have died." Chapter 6. Although the notification was just 3 words long, I could not stop reading it over and over again. The message never changed, but the emotions I felt sure did. At first, I was angry at myself for failing so epically. Yes, it had been a long time since I last played a video game of any sort, but dying in what was basically the tutorial was such an amateurish move, especially since the mission really hadn't even been that hard. I wondered how many first-time players died in the tutorial. Very few, I could imagine. I wondered if I would have to try it again, or maybe I would have to try another, even easier tutorial. Assuming I got a second chance at all, that is. But then, as I thought about it, I began to calm down a little. Hey, at least I saved that woman, Rebecca, from becoming a victim of theft and possibly even rape. Then I felt sad when I realized that none of that was even very real, despite how realistic everything was. Rebecca was no more a potential victim of theft and rape than I was a superhero. It was all just ones and zeros. None of it really mattered when you thought that. Not like real life, although I guess this was going to be my life now, courtesy of the asshole in the government who somehow got me signed up for this Project Second Life crud. I really did want to punch whoever did this to me. That was when yet another notification, which I was starting to become less and less patient with, popped up in my vision that read thusly: "Mission: Save the woman. Status: Completed. Congratulations. Although you may have succumbed to the wounds that you received during your brief scuffle with the street scum of Adventure City, you sacrificed yourself to save an innocent person like a true hero. You even unlocked the power in the process, proving once and for all that you have what it takes to be the hero you were born to be. Rewards: instant promotion to the hero alignment. NPCs will now trust you more and begin to look to you for help with their problems, although you will have to build your trust stat higher in order to be seen by the general public as the hero you really are." Whoa, I thought the dying would have counted as failing the mission. I checked the objectives for the mission again just to be sure, and saw that it didn't say anything about dying. All you needed to do to complete the mission was defeat the thugs and save the woman. It didn't say dying would cause me to fail. Interesting. That meant I would need to be more careful about reading each mission's victory requirements before I accepted them. I had a feeling I would be able to use this knowledge to help me in the future. I dismissed the notification, only for another to pop up almost immediately afterward. "Congratulations, you have reached the hero alignment. That means you will now have access to all hero classes, equipment, powers, and stats. Congratulations, you completed your origin story. You are now ready to enter the world of Capes Online as a hero, albeit as a newbie at the bottom of the totem pole. Never worry, however. All heroes start out at the bottom, and if you work hard enough, you will eventually achieve recognition for your heroic efforts. Respawn time, instant. You will now immediately respawn in your first base in Adventure City. Have fun!" Before I could react, the notifications and darkness melted around me. I found myself standing alone in what looked like a large, seemingly abandoned warehouse. Startled, I looked around at my surroundings. The warehouse in which I stood looked pretty generic. A smooth concrete floor, a catwalk hanging from the ceiling above, and a large door at one end that was probably where trucks making deliveries or pickups came. An empty-looking office stood at the other end, but other than that, the entire place was bare. It looked like this warehouse hadn't been used in years, if ever. It was also quite cold and smelled like wood and concrete, forcing me to wrap my arms around myself to keep warm. The words Warehouse 13 were painted in red paint on the ceiling above me, which I assumed was the name of this place. This is my base? I muttered, still looking around. What's base? Your base is your headquarters, came an excited, happy-go-lucky voice behind me. It's your home sweet home, where you come after a long day of saving the world, where you can kick back and relax and spend your afternoon watching all those soap operas you missed while heroing. I whirled around to see who had spoken. Standing behind me was a young man of about 18, his hands on his hips and a big, goofy smile on his face. He wore a green and white full spandex bodysuit, complete with big bird-like wings extending out of his back. I wasn't sure how he sneaked up on me like that, or who he was, but he didn't look as threatening or mean as the thugs I beat up. "Who are you?" I said, taking a step back. The man thrust out a hand. "Name's Joe Franco, but you can call me Cyclone, and I am your sidekick." I didn't take Cyclone's outstretched hand because I still didn't quite trust him yet. "My sidekick?" "Sure," Cyclone said cheerfully. "All heroes need a sidekick. Even villains have sidekicks. Aren't you aware of the sidekick system?" I shook my head. "No, I have no idea what you're talking about." "Then let me explain," said Cyclone, although he didn't lower his hand. "You see, when a new hero shows up, they get their very own sidekick. A sidekick's job is to not only support their hero, but also answer your questions and guide you through our big, beautiful, wonderful, fantastic world we call Earth." I eyed Cyclone carefully. "Did you have to use 4 adjectives to describe Earth?" "I could use a million adjectives to describe Earth," Cyclone said without missing a beat. "My friends tell me I ramble too much, though, so I've been trying to restrain myself a little. Just a little, though, because I don't want to be too quiet. Being too quiet is just as bad as being too loud. But no one's ever accused me of being too quiet, although my sister Jessie is quite the "I get it," I interrupted. "You talk. A lot." "Right," said Cyclone. He smiled. "I like you already. You know how to use the fewest amount of words necessary to communicate your thoughts. I wish I could do that. Then maybe people wouldn't call me annoying behind my back, because I know that people are calling me annoying behind my back, and it really bothers. What if I don't want a sidekick?" I asked, already finding myself understanding why other people called Cyclone annoying. Cyclone lowered his hand. "Sorry, but sidekicks are mandatory for all first-time heroes. After a week, though, you can let me go if you want, but for now you need to keep me. You'll keep me, won't you?" Cyclone asked me that with big puppy dog eyes. I was under the impression that Cyclone had faced a lot of rejection before, and maybe was a little lonely, but that did nothing to make me feel more sympathetic toward him. If anything, it just made me more annoyed with him. Still, I took his hand and shook it. "Fine. Since I'm new, I'm going to need a guide anyway. Might as well be you." As I shook Cyclone's hand, a new notification appeared in my vision. "Sidekick acquired. Joseph Cyclone Franco is now your faithful sidekick. To check out his stats, powers, alignment, and more, go to the Sidekick tab in your menu." You just unlocked the sidekick system. Like player characters, sidekicks can level up, learn new powers, equip new weapons and armor, and do pretty much everything else players can do. The difference, however, is that you have control over your sidekick's growth, choosing where to invest stat points, power points, and more under the sidekick screen in your menu. You can only have one sidekick at a time. Curious, I let go of Cyclone's hand and swiped away the notifications. I brought up the menu and clicking sidekick, saw a list of sidekicks pop up in my vision. Cyclone was the sole inhabitant of the list, so I clicked on his name and I found myself staring at a complete 3D model of my sidekick, with his stats and powers set off to the side. Secret identity, Cyclone. Real identity, Joseph Diego Franco. Level 1, experience 0 of 100. Available stat point 0, available power powers 0, alignment, hero, and sidekick. Class speedster, powers flight level 1, gust level 1. Skills, not an A. Equipment, eagle wings, health 10, stamina 10, strength 9, defense 3, charisma 2, intelligence 8, agility 16, evasion 17, accuracy 10, dexterity 9, energy 10, luck 0. Hero stats, courage 1, justice 1, trust 1, fame 0, willpower 1. I looked at Cyclone. "Cyclone, you're not very strong, you know that." "Of course," said Cyclone without even pretending to be offended by my rather blunt remark. "All sidekicks start at the same level as their hero or villain. I level up with you, although I only get half your experience." I scratched my chin. "Do I have to manually level up each and every one of your stats and powers myself? Seems like a lot of work." "Nope," Cyclone said. "You can set my growth to auto if you want. That way I'll have the freedom to grow my stats and powers as I see fit while you don't have to do anything." "How do I said, seeing a tab under Cyclone's name that read Sidekick Growth. I clicked the tab and toggled manual to auto. "There, now I don't have to worry about leveling you up or anything like that." "Thanks," said Cyclone. "I prefer being able to level up my powers and stats on my own anyway. Not that I don't trust your judgment, of course, but I still like having some degree of control over my life. I don't like feeling helpless, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think so, I said. Then I frowned. Tell me this, do you mind if I call you Sai? You can call me whatever you want, said Cyclone with a big smile. You're the hero, after all. You can even rename me if you want. I don't have any choice in the matter. I nodded, although privately I was starting to wonder what the difference between being a sidekick and a slave was in this game if he couldn't even name himself. Okay, Sai, what would happen if I fired you? Sai's smile immediately vanished from his face and tears appeared in the corners of his eyes. I thought you said you weren't going to do that. Seeing Sai on the verge of tears, I held up my hands and said, No, this is just theoretical. I mean, this is my first day as a hero. I'm just trying to understand the game world, that's all. Sai abruptly stopped sniffling, his big grin stretching over his face again. Okay, well, when you fire me, all of my stats, powers, and levels are reset to their default. That way, if some other hero decided to recruit me, they wouldn't have an unfair advantage over the other heroes. As your sidekick, I can also aid you in battle, which is one reason you want to make sure I keep up with you. I nodded. That made sense from a gameplay perspective, but I still found it weird how Sai looked and acted so much like a real human. He talked about leveling up in stats and other video game terminology like it was just an ordinary everyday thing. For him, I guess it was, but me personally, I wasn't sure I would ever get used to this stuff. Even if this was my life now, I wasn't sure I would ever find this ordinary. Not when I knew that this was all just a really advanced game and nothing more. Thinking about my current condition made me look at my menu again. Right at the bottom of the menu was a button labeled Help. I recalled Chuck, the VR agent, informing me that let's see. I recalled Chuck, the VR agent, informing me that I would have a button in-game that would allow me to talk to him anytime I wanted. I also recalled him saying that the Department of Virtual Reality would be watching my every move, although I saw no cameras around to indicate that anyone was watching us. For a moment, I considered pressing the button to call Chuck, but decided against it. Right now, I wanted to learn more about this game and how it worked before I talked to him about anything. Besides, I had the distinct feeling that Chuck, like so many government bureaucrats, had mastered the art of feigning ignorance about certain subject matter they weren't allowed to talk about, such as the identity of the idiot who put me in here in the first place. Talking to Chuck would be a waste of time at this point. Alright, Sai, I said. You said a sidekick's job is to guide their hero in the world, right? Sai nodded. Of course. Alright, I said again. I want to find out more about my character's stats and powers, as well as how all of this even works. Certainly, said Sai. He rubbed his hands together, a rather evil glint in his eyes. This is where the fun is about to begin. I hope you're ready, boss, because once we get started, there's no getting off this ride. Chapter 7. The manic glint in Sai's eyes made me uncomfortable, but I said, We're not going to do anything, painful, are we? Alright guys, that is the end of this sample. Again, this was the player Blackout by Flint. If you enjoyed that, there is a link to it in the description. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day, a good night, a good week, a good weekend, whatever time it is that you're watching this, and I will see you next time.